From the dawn of time, human beings have told stories of places that once existed but now lie buried beneath oceans, deserts, and jungles. These are not ordinary cities. They are whispered about as realms of gold, of crystal palaces, of gods walking among mortals. They are said to have risen to unmatched heights of knowledge and splendor, only to vanish, often in a single night of fire, flood, or darkness. And though mainstream history often dismisses them as myth, the persistence of these tales across cultures suggests something deeper, something unsettling. Could the memories of these lost cities be fragments of real history, preserved through myth and prophecy? And could the warnings tied to their disappearance point toward a future where they might return? Take, for example, the most famous of all, Atlantis. First described by the Greek philosopher Plato, it was said to be a civilization so advanced, so magnificent, that its power threatened even Athens. Then, in a single catastrophic day and night, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea. For centuries, scholars argued, was Plato recounting allegory, or was he preserving a fragment of real memory? But Atlantis is only one of many. Around the world, almost every culture holds its own story of a great city that rose in splendor and then mysteriously fell. The Basques whisper of Antilia, the Bretons of Wyas, the Indians of Dwarka, the Mayans of Aslan, all vanish, yet all linger in collective memory, as if they are waiting for rediscovery. There is something haunting about these stories. The details shift, but the themes remain constant. Advanced knowledge, sudden destruction, and an enduring warning. It is as if humanity itself cannot forget, as if some buried part of our psyche insists on recalling what mainstream history cannot prove. The ruins may lie beneath waves or sands, but the memory endures, passed through prophecy, song, or whispered tale around a fire. Historians often tell us these stories are allegory. Atlantis, they say, is a parable about pride and downfall. El Dorado is a metaphor for greed. YS is a cautionary tale about sin and divine punishment. But what if these interpretations are only the surface? What if these myths are the veiled remnants of real events? And what if, encoded within them, there's a prophecy, a warning, that the vanished cities are not truly gone, but destined to return? Imagine for a moment the chilling possibility that Atlantis and its counterparts were not merely destroyed, but deliberately hidden, sealed away by forces natural or unnatural, waiting for the right cosmic alignment to re-emerge. This is not as far-fetched as it sounds. In ancient texts, there are hints of cycles, of worlds destroyed and reborn, of civilizations swallowed and later resurfaced. The Mayan Popol Vuh speaks of worlds built and destroyed in succession. Hindu cosmology speaks of yugas, great ages in which civilizations rise and fall. The Bible speaks of cities destroyed for corruption, but also of a new Jerusalem that one day will descend again. The pattern is everywhere. Disappearance is never the end, but part of a cycle. The fascination with vanished cities is not confined to ancient storytellers. Explorers, scholars, and mystics alike have felt the pull. Christopher Columbus himself carried with him tales of Antilia, a mysterious island kingdom said to lie west of Spain, guiding him toward the unknown. Conquistadors ravaged South America in search of golden cities that had already vanished. Even in the 20th century, mystics like Edgar Cayce spoke of Atlantis rising again from the sea near the Bahamas, its ruins waiting beneath turquoise waters. Why, across centuries, does humanity insist these places are not entirely lost? Some would argue it is because these vanished cities are more than history. They are prophecy. They are memories planted not just in books, but in human consciousness, preparing us for a future return. And indeed, prophecies abound. Cayce predicted Atlantis would re-emerge in our era. Nostradamus cryptically referred to drowned cities that would rise again. Indigenous shamans in South America speak of hidden cities of light that will reveal themselves when humanity is ready. But if this is true, then the real question is not whether the vanished cities existed, but why they disappeared. Were they destroyed by natural catastrophe, tsunamis, earthquakes, shifting seas? Or were they deliberately erased by higher powers, hidden away until humanity reached a certain threshold? Could it be that their knowledge, their technology was too dangerous or too sacred for their age, and so it was withdrawn? If so, the return of these cities might not be a gift, but a test, a reckoning. Picture, for a moment, what it would mean if a vanished city returned today. Not just ruins beneath the ocean, but an entire intact metropolis, sealed in time, revealing itself. Advanced technologies unknown to us. Archives of knowledge that could overturn everything we think we know about human history. Religions challenged, governments destabilized, science rewritten. For some, it will be salvation. For others, chaos. Is it any wonder that stories of vanished cities so often come paired with warnings? As we begin this journey into the vanished cities and the prophecy that warns of their return, remember this. Myths are not simply entertainment. They are memory. They are encoded history. And they may be warnings meant to survive when all else is lost. If Atlantis, YS, El Dorado, and the others are real, then they're not only part of our past. They are part of our future, and their reappearance may be closer than we imagine. This documentary is not just about archaeology, not just about legend. It is about the possibility that humanity lives in a cycle of forgetting and remembering, destruction and renewal. The vanished cities are not gone forever. They are waiting for the right moment, the right alignment, the right catastrophe or revelation to rise again. And when they do, the question will not be whether we can find them. The question will be, are we ready? Long before satellites traced every coastline and modern GPS reduced the world into grids and coordinates, humanity navigated by instinct, stars, and maps that were more art than science. And yet, among those ancient maps, there exist anomalies, documents that show lands which should not exist, islands drawn centuries before their discovery, and coastlines mapped with uncanny accuracy long before modern cartography was possible. These are not mere curiosities of history. They may be fragments of knowledge preserved from civilizations we are told never existed, glimpses of vanished cities etched into parchment, and warnings encoded in geography itself. The most famous example is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral whose passion for exploration rivaled his skill in war. On it, we find a startling depiction: the coastlines of Africa, South America, and, most controversially, Antarctica, drawn with precise detail centuries before Antarctica was officially discovered. Even more baffling, the map shows the continent not as it appears today beneath ice, but as it would appear ice-free, its mountains and rivers revealed. Geologists argue that such features have been hidden under miles of ice for thousands of years. How, then, could a 16th century admiral have drawn them? Piri Reis himself claimed he did not invent the map, but copied it from older charts, relics of long-lost navigators whose origins he could not name. Could those source maps have come from vanished cities, civilizations whose geographical knowledge exceeded even our own? Mainstream historians often dismiss this idea, suggesting the details were either coincidence or misinterpretation. But is it coincidence that Piri Reis's chart aligns so closely with modern seismic studies of Antarctica's subglacial landscape? Or is it evidence of an older cartographic tradition preserved through the ages? And the Piri Reis map is not alone. In 1531, the French cartographer Orensfine produced a world map that also depicted Antarctica, again, long before its official discovery. His rendering, like Piri Reis's, showed the continent without ice. Similar anomalies appear in other charts. The Zeno map of 1380, which depicted islands in the North Atlantic that have since disappeared, and the Dulcert-Port Ohlon chart of 1339, which shows regions of Africa in surprising detail, centuries before European explorers documented them. Again and again, we see the same pattern. Maps that record places history says could not have been known. What is striking is not just the accuracy of these maps, but the consistency of their anomalies. Islands like Antilia, High Brazil, and Frisland appear repeatedly across charts from different centuries and cultures. Some explorers even reported glimpsing them, only to find them vanish like mirages. Were these cartographers merely copying each other's mistakes, perpetuating myths of phantom islands? Or were they, in fact, preserving memories of real cities and lands swallowed by time, disasters, or shifting seas? High Brazil, for instance, appears on maps as early as 1325. It was always drawn as a round island west of Ireland, often shrouded in mist. Sailors swore they had seen its shores, lush and green, only to lose sight of it the closer they approached. Legends described it as a land of advanced knowledge, home to priests or magicians guarding secrets of creation. By the 17th century, the island vanished from maps, written off as myth. But if High Brazil truly existed, could it have been one of those vanished cities, preserved in memory through cartography and oral tradition? The deeper we look, the stranger it becomes. In many of these maps, vanished lands and cities are drawn with a kind of reverence, as if the cartographers were not simply charting geography, but encoding mysteries. Marginal notes speak of ruins, temples, and treasures. Some maps are covered in strange symbols, suns, stars, compasses that hint at alignments with the heavens. These are not mistakes. They are breadcrumbs, and together, they suggest that ancient maps may not simply record what explorers saw, but what they remembered from a far older age of discovery. The idea grows even more compelling when we consider the role of secret archives. The Vatican Library, long shrouded in secrecy, is rumored to contain ancient charts that never see public light. Private collections of royal houses, Masonic lodges, and elite families may hold others. Some scholars whisper that the Pyrie Reis map is but a fragment of a much larger, hidden cartographic tradition. If these vanished cities were known in the past, then perhaps their locations have been carefully guarded by those who fear or await their return. Consider also the Portolan charts of the Middle Ages. These maps, often drawn on vellum, depicted coastlines with such accuracy that modern navigators marvel at them. Yet they appeared suddenly in the 13th century, without any clear precedent, as if they were copies of far older sources. Who first charted those coasts with such precision? Who passed that knowledge through the centuries? And why do so many of these charts feature lands and islands that no longer exist? Modern skeptics argue that these anomalies can be explained by copying errors, imaginative embellishments, or misidentifications. But what if those so-called errors are in fact the most important parts? The vanished islands, the strange symbols, the coastlines drawn centuries ahead of their time. What if they point us toward a hidden geography, one that includes the vanished cities and civilizations we are told never existed? There is also the strange case of maps that seem almost prophetic. Take the Mercator maps, based on projections that perfectly balance longitude and latitude across the globe. Mercator claimed to draw on older sources, and his world maps contain mysterious notes about lands at the poles, vortexes, and passages that defy conventional understanding. Were these annotations merely fanciful, or do they preserve knowledge of places yet to re-emerge, as some legends suggest? Again and again, we are confronted with the same unsettling possibility that the vanished cities were not fully erased, but encoded in geography, waiting for rediscovery. Like ghosts imprinted on parchment, their presence lingers in maps that bridge the worlds of fact and myth. And the persistence of these anomalies hints that some cartographers knew more than they revealed. If we take these maps seriously, then a picture begins to form. Vanished cities may not lie in some mythical realm, but in places we have overlooked or dismissed. Beneath the waves of the Atlantic, under the sands of the Sahara, or deep within jungles too vast to conquer. Ancient maps may be the keys, guiding us not just to forgotten ruins, but to the truth that history is older, stranger, and more cyclical than we dare admit. And if that is the case, then the maps are not only records of the past, they are warnings of the future. Because if these vanished cities are destined to return, then geography itself may shift once more. Islands may rise from the sea, hidden lands may reappear, and humanity will be forced to reckon with knowledge long suppressed. The maps, in this sense, are prophecy disguised as cartography. They remind us that the world is not static, but alive, constantly hiding, revealing, and transforming. So the next time we look at an ancient chart, perhaps we should not dismiss its phantom islands and impossible coastlines. Perhaps we should ask instead, whose memories were these? What civilizations did they come from? And are they waiting, even now, to return? When we peel back the layers of history, we find that humanity's oldest memories are not written in stone tablets or papyrus scrolls. They are whispered in myths, sung in poems, and told in stories passed down across generations. These stories, fragile as they may seem, endure longer than empires. They outlast kings, dynasties, and even civilizations themselves. And woven into them, again and again, are accounts of vanished cities. It is almost uncanny. No matter where you travel in the world, you will find a culture that speaks of a city that once existed in splendor, only to vanish without a trace. Each story is local, shaped by language and landscape, but the theme remains constant. There is always a city of wealth and knowledge. There is always sudden catastrophe, and there is always a warning. Take, for example, the legend of Ys, told by the Bretons of France. Ys was said to be a city built below sea level, protected by a mighty sea wall and gates. It was ruled by King Gradlon and his daughter Dot. In its glory, Ys was unmatched, golden towers, marble streets, and endless festivities. But Dahut, seduced by darker influences, was said to open the floodgates one night, and the sea consumed the city in an instant. To this day, sailors claim that on calm nights, you can hear the bells of Ys ringing beneath the waves of Brittany. Was this merely a tale of sin and punishment? Or is it a distant echo of a city that really was swallowed by the sea? Across the Atlantic, the Mesoamerican peoples preserved their own legends. The Aztecs spoke of Aztlan, a homeland of glittering temples and lakes. According to their mythology, the Aztec people once lived in Aztlan before embarking on a great migration that led them to found Tenochtitlan, modern-day Mexico City. Some scholars dismiss Aztlan as a symbolic Eden, but others have searched for it in earnest, believing it may have been a real city, perhaps even one swallowed by rising waters in the Gulf of California. A lost city remembered only in myth, waiting to be rediscovered. Further south, the Andes echo with whispers of Paititi, a hidden city of gold said to lie somewhere in the uncharted depths of the Amazon. Spanish conquistadors hunted for it with relentless obsession, convinced it was the true source of the Inca Empire's wealth. Entire expeditions disappeared in search of it. For centuries, indigenous peoples have guarded their knowledge, speaking only in fragments, saying Paititi exists, but it is not for outsiders. Could Paititi be one of those vanished cities, carefully hidden, preserved until the world is ready? The parallels stretch even farther. In India, ancient Sanskrit texts speak of Dwarka, the golden city of Lord Krishna, which is said to have sunk beneath the sea after his death. For centuries, it was dismissed as mythology until modern marine archaeologists found submerged ruins off the coast of Gujarat that bear a striking resemblance to the descriptions. Temples, streets, and walls lie buried beneath the waves, lending credibility to stories once thought impossible. Is Dwarka proof that myth is often memory, that the line between legend and history is not as firm as we are told? In Celtic lore, there are tales of Lyonesse, a land said to lie off the coast of Cornwall, now submerged. The Cornish people say that it once housed 100 churches, but a sudden catastrophe sent it beneath the waves. Fishermen claim to see its towers in the deep on clear days. The Welsh, too, speak of Canarach Gwaelod, another sunken kingdom swallowed by the sea, ruled by a careless prince who failed to close its floodgates in time. These tales, like that of YS, carry not just descriptions of loss, but warnings. Hubris, carelessness, and moral decay invite destruction. Is it possible that so many cultures simply invented these stories independently? Or is there something deeper at play? A collective memory, perhaps even an inherited trauma, passed down through myth? Psychologists have long argued that myths preserve symbolic truths, but they may also preserve historical ones. When storytellers describe a great city destroyed by flood, fire, or divine wrath, are they describing imagination? Or are they transmitting an ancient memory of cities swallowed by rising seas at the end of the last ice age? The Great Flood myth itself ties many of these stories together. From the biblical Noah to the Sumerian Utnapishtim, from Manu in Hindu tradition to flood legends in Native American tribes, we hear again and again of rising waters that drowned entire worlds. Archaeologists have traced sea level rise at the end of the Pleistocene, when massive ice sheets melted, submerging vast coastal areas. Could it be that these flood stories preserve not just vague memories, but specific events? The drowning of real cities, later mythologized into the legends we know today? Even Plato, when he wrote of Atlantis, described it as an ancient memory passed to him through Egyptian priests. They told him of a civilization that had existed 9,000 years before his time, far too ancient for written history, yet preserved in oral tradition. Could other myths of vanished cities also trace their roots to such deep antiquity, carried like fragile embers through millennia, only to ignite again in story? And what are the warnings embedded in these tales? Almost without exception, the vanished city is destroyed because of corruption, arrogance, or a failure to heed divine or cosmic laws. YS falls because of Dahat sin. Atlantis falls because of pride. Dwarka falls when Krishna departs, as if the people could no longer sustain it alone. Again and again, we are told that cities vanish not by chance, but by fate, that when human beings overreach, the earth or the gods intervene. These stories are less about punishment than about cycles, reminding us that civilizations rise, flourish, and inevitably fall. But perhaps the most unsettling element is the suggestion that these cities are not gone forever. Many myths speak of their lingering presence, bells tolling beneath the sea, lights flickering in the depths, ruins glimpsed at twilight. The Irish said that High Brazil could be seen only once every 7 years. The Bretons believed YS would one day rise again. The Andean shamans speak of Paititi revealing itself when humanity is ready. Again, the theme repeats. The vanished cities are not destroyed. They are hidden, waiting. What does this mean for us? If myth is not invention, but memory, if it encodes history, then perhaps the vanished cities are more than symbols. They may be real places that existed, were lost, and are destined to return. And if the prophecies are to be believed, their return will not be a simple discovery of ruins, but a re-emergence that will change everything we know about our world. So as we move deeper into this journey, we must ask, are these legends simply bedtime stories for ancient peoples? Or are they the surviving record of a cycle of civilizations, encoded in memory to prepare us for the moment when the hidden will return to light? The myths suggest the latter. And if that is true, then humanity has been warned again and again of what is coming. When we hear of vanished cities, the first question is always how. How could entire civilizations, complete with streets, temples, palaces, and thriving populations, disappear as if swallowed by the earth? Were these stories nothing more than morality tales, or could they be echoes of real cataclysms, events so devastating they erased entire cultures from memory? And if so, were these forces natural, cosmic, or perhaps even something beyond the natural, something supernatural? History is littered with evidence of sudden destruction. Consider Pompeii, frozen in time by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. In a single day, An entire Roman city was entombed beneath ash and pumice. When it was rediscovered centuries later, its streets, frescoes, and even food on tables lay preserved in eerie silence. Pompeii reminds us that a city's glory can vanish in an instant. But unlike Pompeii, many of the legendary cities we discuss, Atlantis, Dwarka, left no trace at all. How could that be? One answer may lie in the great geological cataclysms that shape our planet. The Earth is not static. It shifts, quakes, and groans. Earthquakes can level cities in minutes. Tsunamis can sweep entire coastlines away. Volcanic eruptions can erase civilizations. But there are also slower, larger forces, sea levels rising, deserts spreading, rivers changing course. At the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, sea levels rose by over 400 feet, swallowing vast stretches of coastal land. Entire settlements would have disappeared beneath the waves, their memory surviving only as stories. Could this explain why so many myths of vanished cities are tied to floods? But then, there are mysteries science struggles to explain. In Plato's account, Atlantis was not merely destroyed, it was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. This does not sound like gradual climate change. It sounds like sudden catastrophe. Modern researchers have speculated about asteroid impacts, such as the controversial Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which suggests a cometary collision 12,800 years ago triggered widespread flooding and extinctions. If such an event occurred, it could easily have obliterated advanced coastal civilizations, leaving behind only fragments of memory. Other possibilities are equally unsettling. Entire landmasses can vanish through tectonic shifts. Legends from the Pacific tell of islands swallowed by earthquakes, while Japan remembers Kukai's prophecy that parts of the archipelago would one day sink. The lost continent of Kumari Kandam, preserved in Tamil tradition, is said to have been swallowed by the Indian Ocean. Could it be that Atlantis, Lemuria, and other legendary continents represent cultural memories of tectonic disasters, whole regions slipping beneath the sea, never to return? But beyond geology, there are darker, more esoteric explanations. Many traditions suggest that the disappearance of these cities was not natural at all, but ordained, punishment from gods, or the work of unseen forces. In the Breton legend, YS falls not because of tides, but because Dahet opened the gates in defiance of divine law. In the Bible, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah are consumed by fire from heaven. Atlantis, according to Plato, fell because its people grew corrupt and prideful, drawing the wrath of the gods. The message is clear. Civilizations may rise to greatness, but when they break cosmic laws, they are erased. Could these stories be symbolic? Of course. But what if they're also literal? Imagine a civilization that mastered energies or technologies we cannot yet comprehend. What if their experiments destabilized the very fabric of their environment? Ancient myths often speak of people drawing too close to the gods or stealing fire from heaven. Could these be poetic ways of describing catastrophic misuse of advanced knowledge? Some esoteric traditions even suggest Atlantis fell because it experimented with crystal technologies and harnessed energies that destabilized nature itself. If true, the destruction of such cities would be less divine punishment than self-inflicted disaster. Yet the supernatural element cannot be dismissed so easily. Indigenous traditions often describe not just floods and quakes, but skies darkened, stars falling, and even portals opening. Some legends suggest the cities were not destroyed at all, but shifted into another realm. Tibetan myths speak of Shambhala, a city hidden not by destruction, but by withdrawal into another dimension. The Irish spoke of the Sidhi, cities of the Fae, that vanished into the mists but could reappear when the veil thins. Could it be that some vanished cities still exist, not destroyed but hidden from our perception? What makes the puzzle more intriguing is the recurring theme of cycles. Many cultures insist that worlds are created and destroyed in repeating patterns. The Mayans spoke of successive suns, ages of the world destroyed by flood, fire, and darkness, each cycle giving birth to a new one. Hindu cosmology describes yugas, cycles of creation and dissolution. The Hopi tell of previous worlds destroyed by water and fire, with survivors carrying knowledge into the next age. If these cycles are real, then vanished cities may be casualties of cosmic resets, events that erase civilizations to clear the way for new ones. Science, too, hints at these cycles. Geologists speak of mass extinctions that periodically reset life on Earth. Astronomers note that the Earth passes through cosmic debris fields, increasing the risk of impacts. Could it be that human civilizations are not immune? That every few millennia, a catastrophe wipes the slate clean, leaving behind only myths of the worlds that came before? But here lies the unsettling question. If natural and supernatural forces both play a role in these vanishings, are we destined to experience another? And could the prophecy of the vanished cities' return be tied not to gentle rediscovery, but to the next great cataclysm? If entire civilizations were erased in past ages, their reemergence might coincide with destruction on a planetary scale. We stand today at strange crossroads. Rising seas threaten modern coastal cities, echoing the flood myths of old. Earthquakes rumble across fault lines. Climate shifts disrupt familiar patterns. Astronomers warn of near-Earth objects that could devastate life in an instant. It is as if the same forces that once swallowed Atlantis, Dwarka, and YS still lurk beneath our feet and above our skies. The cycle may not be over. It may only be beginning again. And yet, there is another possibility, one that is both wondrous and terrifying. If the cities did not vanish by accident, if they were hidden or preserved by design, then their return may not be destruction but revelation. Imagine seas parting, jungles reseeding, or mists lifting to reveal entire metropolises, preserved in time, stepping back into history. This would be no ruin, no archaeology, but a resurrection. And in that moment, humanity would face the question, are we ready to meet the civilizations that came before us? So when we ask how cities vanish, we are really asking something greater. We are asking whether the world itself conspires in cycles of destruction and renewal. We are asking whether natural disasters are random or whether they follow patterns tied to cosmic laws. We are asking whether supernatural forces guide the rise and fall of civilizations. And perhaps most haunting of all, we are asking whether we stand on the edge of the same fate. The vanished cities of the past warn us. Nothing is permanent, not even greatness. Civilizations can vanish overnight. And whether by fire, flood, earth, or forces beyond imagination, what has happened before may happen again. The only question is, when? When we speak of vanished cities, there is one name that towers above them all: Atlantis. Even if people know nothing of Dwarka, YS, or the countless submerged cities whispered about in forgotten traditions, they know Atlantis. It is the archetype, the prototype, the city that represents every lost civilization. But why? Why has this one story, passed down from a single philosopher over 2 millennia ago, become the most enduring mystery in human history? And why do so many cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, tell eerily similar stories of cities swallowed by the sea? The legend of Atlantis begins with Plato. Around 360 BCE, in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, Plato tells of a mighty empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. This empire, Atlantis, was larger than Libya and Asia combined, a kingdom blessed with wealth, technology, and power. Its people grew strong and arrogant, expanding across the Mediterranean, threatening even Athens itself. But in a single night of catastrophe, Atlantis was destroyed, swallowed by the ocean, never to be seen again. Plato claimed his story was no invention, but a preserved memory. He said the tale was passed down from Egyptian priests to the Athenian lawgiver Solon, who carried it back to Greece. In other words, Atlantis was not a fable, but history, Scholars have debated this point for centuries. Was Plato creating an allegory for hubris and divine punishment, or was he truly recording fragments of an ancient memory? Regardless of his intention, the Atlantis story has captivated minds ever since. During the Renaissance, explorers believed they might find it in the New World. Enlightenment thinkers wondered if it explained the origins of advanced knowledge in distant lands. In the 19th century, as geology and archaeology began to uncover human antiquity, Atlantis became a popular explanation for anomalies. Why did pyramid-like structures exist in both Egypt and Mesoamerica? Why did myths of floods and lost lands echo across the globe? To many, Atlantis was the missing link. But Atlantis is not alone. It is part of a pattern. Around the world, in places that supposedly had no contact, we find stories of vanished lands and sunken cities. The Celts spoke of Ys, a great city in Brittany, drowned beneath the sea for its arrogance and sin. The Irish told of Hy Brasil, a phantom island west of Ireland that appeared once every 7 years before vanishing again into mist. In Hindu tradition, we hear of Dwarka, the golden city of Krishna, said to have been swallowed by the Arabian Sea. In Tamil lore, there was Kumari Kandam, a vast continent lost beneath the Indian Ocean. The Polynesians sang of Hiva, the ancestral homeland submerged by waves. The list stretches endlessly. What is remarkable is not merely that these stories exist, but that they follow a strikingly similar pattern. A glorious city or land rises to prominence, becomes corrupt or prideful, and then is destroyed by water, fire, or divine wrath. This pattern recurs with almost mechanical precision. Could it be that these myths are not independent inventions, but fragments of a shared memory? Echoes of real cataclysms retold in different tongues? Modern archaeology has uncovered intriguing evidence that lends weight to these tales. In the Bay of Cambay, off the coast of India, sonar scans revealed structures deep beneath the waves. Walls, foundations, and geometric patterns suggesting man-made design. Some claim this could be the legendary Dwarka, Krishna's city, described in the Mahabharata as a city of gold swallowed by the sea. In Japan, divers discovered the Yanaguni Monument, a massive underwater structure with terraces, steps, and platforms. Though mainstream scholars dismiss it as natural rock formation, others insist it bears unmistakable signs of ancient craftsmanship. In the Mediterranean, near Cyprus, strange submerged ruins have been detected, leading some to wonder if remnants of Atlantis still lie beneath the sea. Even in the Americas, myths of vanished cities abound. The Maya spoke of Aztlan, the ancestral homeland across the sea. The Aztecs remembered Talans, great cities destroyed and rebuilt in cycles. In Bolivia, the ruins of Tiwanaku suggest an advanced culture that flourished long before history officially records civilization in that region. Some have even speculated that the fabled Atlantis was not in the Atlantic at all, but in the Americas themselves. But if Atlantis and its counterparts were real, what kind of civilizations were they? Were they truly advanced in ways we cannot imagine? Plato's account describes Atlanteans mastering engineering, constructing canals, temples, and palaces plated with orichalcum, a mysterious metal said to shine like fire. Some esoteric traditions go further, claiming Atlantis possessed technologies far beyond our own: airships, crystal energy systems, even psychic powers. Writers like Ignatius Donnelly and Helena Blavatsky argued that Atlantis was the root of all ancient wisdom, the mother civilization that seeded Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Americas with knowledge. Critics, of course, dismiss this as fantasy. They argue Atlantis is nothing more than allegory, that Dwarka is exaggeration, that Kumari Kandam is nationalist myth-making. And yet, as more underwater ruins are discovered, the line between myth and memory grows increasingly blurred. Could it be that mainstream history, cautious and conservative, simply cannot yet accept the possibility of civilizations older, and perhaps more advanced, than we currently acknowledge? The archetype of Atlantis also serves another function. It is a warning. In every version, the vanished city does not fall merely because of natural disaster, but because of moral failure. Pride, arrogance, corruption, misuse of power. In Plato's telling, Atlantis became greedy and imperialistic, and only then did the gods unleash destruction. In YS, it was Dahetsin that opened the gates to the sea. In Sodom and Gomorrah, it was depravity that called down fire. The myth serves as a mirror, reflecting the dangers of hubris back to every civilization that retells it. And this may be why the archetype is so powerful. It is not just a story of the past. It is a prophecy for the future. Atlantis reminds us that no empire, no matter how mighty, is safe from collapse. Rome fell. The great kingdoms of Mesopotamia crumbled. The Mayan cities were abandoned to the jungle. And one day, so too might our own glass and steel metropolises sink into ruin. The question is not whether cities vanish, but whether we learn the lessons encoded in the myths. Yet, there is one final element that makes Atlantis and its counterparts so compelling: the possibility of return. Myths do not always speak of final destruction. High Brazil reappears in cycles. Shambhala is said to emerge when the world needs it most. Even Atlantis, in esoteric traditions, is not gone forever. It sleeps beneath the waves, waiting for the right time to rise again. Could these myths be encoding not just memory of destruction, but prophecy of restoration? If so, the vanished cities are not dead, but dormant, waiting to step back into human history. The archetype of Atlantis, then, is more than myth. It is a lens through which we view the mystery of vanished worlds. It ties together disparate cultures, echoes geological cataclysms, warns of moral decay, and whispers of cyclical time. Whether literal or allegorical, Atlantis and its fellow vanished lands remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but memory persists. And perhaps, just perhaps, the day will come when these archetypes shift from legend back into living reality. If Atlantis is the king of vanished worlds, then Dwarka and YS are its most haunting echoes, sister cities swallowed by the sea, remembered in the songs of poets and the scriptures of sages. Unlike Atlantis, which comes to us through Plato's dialogues, these cities live in traditions tied deeply to cultural memory. They are not simply allegories. They are part of living religions and folklore, woven into the very identity of those who tell their stories. And yet, what they share with Atlantis is chilling: a vision of splendor, followed by destruction, and the eternal whisper that perhaps they are not gone forever. Let us begin in India with the legendary city of Dwarka. According to the Mahabharata and other sacred texts, Dwarka was the golden city of Krishna, the divine hero and eighth avatar of Vishnu. It was said to be a marvel of architecture: palaces inlaid with jewels, streets laid out in perfect geometry, and a harbor so grand it welcomed ships from every corner of the ancient world. Built upon the western coast of India, Dwarka was not just a city, but a sacred center, a place where the divine walked among mortals. But Dwarka was not destined to last. The scriptures tell us that after Krishna's departure from the world, the city fell into decline. A great flood came, and the sea swallowed it whole. All that remained was legend, passed from generation to generation, until many dismissed it as myth. Yet in recent decades, sonar and underwater archaeology have revealed astonishing discoveries off the coast of modern-day Dwarka. Divers found submerged structures, massive stone blocks, and foundations that suggest a planned urban landscape lying beneath the Arabian Sea. Some structures appear to align with descriptions in the Mahabharata. Could it be that Dwarka was not myth after all, but a real city drowned thousands of years ago? Mainstream archaeology hesitates. Some argue these underwater formations are natural, others that they are from later medieval periods. But the sheer scale, along with the cultural memory that never died, forces us to reconsider. If Dwarka truly existed where legend placed it, then we are looking at a case where mythology preserves memory far more accurately than modern historians once believed. And if Dwarka existed, then how many other mythical cities might also be real? Travel westward from India, across continents and centuries, and you find the legend of Ys, the great city of Brittany in France. Ys was said to be built below sea level, protected by mighty dikes and gates, a marvel of human ingenuity and ambition. According to the tale, Ys was founded by King Gradlon, who built it for his daughter Dahat. Under Dahat's rule, Ys became a city of revelry and excess, a place of sin and decadence. But one night, Dahat, corrupted by a demon or lover disguised as the devil himself, stole the key to the sea gates and opened them. The ocean roared in, flooding the city and swallowing it forever. Even today, in Brittany, fishermen claim to hear church bells tolling beneath the waves, as if Ys still lingers, submerged but not gone. Some say it can be seen at low tide, shimmering like a ghost city beneath the waters. Others whisper that Ys will one day rise again, when the time of reckoning comes. The story of Ys, like Atlantis, is a tale of hubris punished by nature, or by forces beyond nature. But unlike Plato's account, the legend of Ys still breathes in local folklore, haunting the coasts of France like a warning. Dwarka and Ys are only two of countless such legends. Across the globe, the pattern repeats. In Wales, there is the tale of Canar Gwaelod, another land lost to the sea when its watchmen failed to close the floodgates. In Portugal, stories tell of cities drowned along the coast, their bells heard in storms. In South America, the Uru people of Bolivia speak of a golden city beneath Lake Titicaca, shimmering when the waters are calm. In the Pacific, Polynesian traditions recall lands swallowed by waves, often seen as the ancestral homelands of entire peoples. The echoes are everywhere. The fascinating detail is this: these are not isolated coincidences. The motif of a city built in splendor, corrupted, and then drowned by water is so widespread it almost feels archetypal. It is as if humanity carries, in its subconscious, a collective memory of places lost to the sea. Psychology might argue that water represents cleansing or destruction in mythic symbolism. But archaeology and geology give us another perspective. Rising seas at the end of the Ice Age would have drowned vast coastal settlements worldwide. The memory of such floods could easily have entered myth, retold and reshaped until it became the stories of Dwarka, Ys, and beyond. Yet, the supernatural dimension cannot be ignored. Many of these legends speak not just of destruction, but of survival, or even return. Dwarka, according to some Hindu traditions, was not merely destroyed, it was preserved beneath the waves, waiting for a time when it would re-emerge. Ys, too, is said to rise again when France is in its greatest need. These are not just stories of endings, but of cycles of disappearance and reappearance, almost like breathing. Inhale and exhale, submergence and return. Could it be that these myths encode not just memory of cataclysm, but prophecy of restoration? Modern technology has brought us closer than ever to these possibilities. As sonar and underwater mapping expand, we are finding more submerged ruins, some confirmed, others hotly debated. Off the coast of Cuba, deep-sea explorers discovered geometric structures that some claimed could be an ancient city, perhaps even older than any known civilization. Off the Japanese island of Yonaguni, divers marvel at massive underwater terraces that appear carved by human hands. Though mainstream scholars dismiss these as natural, the sheer scale and precision continue to spark debate. Each discovery adds to the growing sense that humanity's story may be far older and more complex than the textbooks allow. If Dwarka and Ys are real, if they are not mere allegories, but memories of drowned worlds, then the implications are profound. It means that civilizations capable of advanced urban planning, monumental architecture, and cultural sophistication existed long before we currently acknowledge. It means that myths may be not fiction, but history encoded in story. And it means that the sea, vast and impenetrable, may be hiding chapters of human history waiting to be rediscovered. But perhaps the most haunting idea is that these cities are not lost forever. Legends insist they will return. In India, pilgrims still visit the shore of Dwarka, offering prayers to the hidden city beneath the waves. In Brittany, the tale of YS is told with the refrain, YS will rise again. And if these are not simply poetic hopes, but prophecies rooted in cycles we do not yet understand, then perhaps one day the ocean will give up its secrets. The vanished cities, then, are not only about the past, they are about the future. They remind us that our world is fragile, that our civilizations can be swept away by forces beyond our control. But they also whisper that what is lost is never truly gone. Memory endures, stories endure, and perhaps beneath the surface of the sea, the cities themselves endure, waiting for the appointed hour to return. In Dwarka, in YS, and in the countless other submerged legends, we see humanity's deepest fear and its greatest hope. That even in destruction, there is continuity, and that the past may one day rise again to meet us. When we trace the myths of vanished cities and drowned lands, we eventually find ourselves standing before one of the most powerful and universal archetypes in all human storytelling, the Great Flood. It is the story of waters rising, of worlds swept away, of civilizations erased in a single act of cataclysm. And perhaps more than any other myth, it holds a terrifying duality. It is both an account of destruction and a warning of cycles yet to come. The version most familiar in the West comes from the book of Genesis. We know it as the story of Noah's Arkansas humanity. We are told had grown corrupt and violent. The earth was filled with wickedness, and the divine decreed that all life must be purged in a flood that would cover the face of the earth. Only Noah, righteous among men, was chosen to survive. He built an ark at God's command, filled it with his family and pairs of animals, and when the rains came, he floated above the drowned world until the waters receded. A covenant was made. The flood would never again destroy all life. The rainbow in the sky was the sign of that promise. For centuries, scholars viewed this story as a singular revelation. But the closer we look, the more we see it is not unique. It is part of a far older and broader tradition. In Mesopotamia, long before Genesis was written, the Sumerians and Babylonians told of a flood hero named Usidra, later known as Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The parallels are unmistakable. The gods decide to send a flood to wipe out mankind. One man is warned, builds a boat, survives with his family and animals, and afterward, the gods promise never to destroy the world in this way again. The details differ, but the core is identical. Travel to India, and you find the tale of Manu, the primordial man warned by a fish, an avatar of Vishnu, that a flood would soon engulf the world. Manu builds a great boat, ties it to the fish, and is guided to safety atop a mountain. From him, the human race is reborn. In Greece, the story of Deucalion and Pyrrha tells of Zeus sending a flood to destroy the wicked Bronze Age. The couple survives by building a chest, floating to safety, and repopulating the earth. In Native American traditions, from the Hopi to the Cree, flood stories abound, different in detail, yet united in theme. Waters rise, a few survive, and a new world begins. How do we explain this astonishing universality? Mainstream scholars argue that floods are a common enough natural disaster, and so it is unsurprising that cultures developed myths around them. But the scope and similarity of these tales suggests something more. Could they all be fragments of a single memory, a memory of a global deluge? Geology gives us tantalizing possibilities. At the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, glaciers melted and sea levels rose dramatically, over 400 feet worldwide. First coastlines finished. Settlements built along rivers and shores were swallowed forever. Imagine the trauma of such an event, passed down orally from generation to generation until it crystallized into myth. The flood stories, then, might not be allegories at all, but preserve memories of real cataclysmic events that erased entire civilizations. One theory, the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis, suggests that around 5600 BCE, the Mediterranean breached into the Black Sea, flooding vast areas in a catastrophic surge. To the people who lived there, it would have seemed like the end of the world. Is it possible that this memory, carried through migration, influenced the biblical and Mesopotamian accounts? But there is another, more controversial theory, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, scientists believe a comet or asteroid may have struck the Earth, triggering massive fires, abrupt climate change, and the sudden melting of glaciers. This would have unleashed colossal floods across the continents, scouring the land and raising sea levels. If such an event occurred, it would explain the sudden collapse of megafauna, the disappearance of cultures like the Clovis in North America, and perhaps most importantly, the origin of the global flood myth. Could the Great Flood be the collective memory of a near-extinction event caused by a cosmic strike? Yet the flood myths are not merely about water. They are about judgment. Time and again, the story carries a moral charge. Humanity becomes corrupt, the gods grow angry, destruction follows, and only a few chosen or righteous survive. This cannot be dismissed as coincidence. It suggests that ancient people saw these catastrophes not as random accidents of nature, but as cosmic resets, purges designed to cleanse and renew. In the biblical version, it is God's justice. In the Sumerian version, it is the god's capricious wrath. In Hindu tradition, it is Vishnu preserving Dharma by guiding Manu. The message is clear. Human civilizations rise, fall into arrogance, and are swept away so that something new can begin. This idea dovetails eerily with the cycles of time described in so many traditions. The Mayans spoke of ages destroyed by water, fire, and darkness. The Hopi believe we are in the fourth world, with 3 worlds destroyed before by fire and flood. Hindu cosmology divides time into yugas, vast cycles of creation and destruction. The flood, then, is not a one-time event, but part of a pattern. Each age ends in cataclysm, and each cataclysm resets the human story. If this is true, then the flood myths are not simply memories, they are prophecies. They warn us that we, too, live on borrowed time. Our world may seem stable, our cities permanent, but the cycle of destruction has not ended. The same forces, whether natural, cosmic, or divine, that swept away worlds before may one day sweep away ours. But there's another layer, one more esoteric and haunting. Some traditions claim that not all who perished in the floods were lost. Cities, they say, did not merely drown. They were preserved beneath the waters, sealed away until the appointed time of return. In this view, the flood was not only destruction, but concealment. A way of taking civilizations out of the visible world, placing them into the deep, where they sleep until destiny calls them forth again. Imagine this possibility, that beneath our oceans, the remnants of antediluvian civilizations, perhaps even Atlantis itself, still rest, intact and waiting. Not ruins, not rubble, but preserved knowledge, preserved technology, preserved cities. And when the time is right, when the cycle turns again, they will rise. The flood, then, was not the end of their story, but the prologue to their eventual return. The biblical flood and its countless counterparts are thus more than myths. They are keys that unlock humanity's deepest fears and memories, but also its most enduring hopes. They remind us that the world is fragile, that civilizations are temporary, but also that renewal is always possible. And whether we view them as allegory, history, or prophecy, the flood myths demand that we ask the question, are we prepared for the next deluge? Because if history runs in cycles, then the vanished cities of the past are not simply gone. They are waiting, and the waters that once swallowed them may one day deliver them back. For as long as human civilizations have risen and fallen, whispers of prophecy have followed in their wake. From the deserts of Mesopotamia to the mountains of the Andes, cultures across the globe carried within their oral traditions and sacred texts a warning that the cities which once thrived and then mysteriously vanished would not remain gone forever. These stories were not told as myths alone, but as future certainties, predictions that awaited their appointed hour. In this section, we plunge into the enigmatic world of prophecies, ancient voices preserved through song, scripture, and symbol that warn of the return of vanished cities. The concept of cyclical history was foundational to many ancient societies. Unlike the modern Western idea of linear time, where history progresses in one direction, countless cultures believed time moved in great repeating cycles, ages of creation, flourishing, destruction, and renewal. The Hindu tradition speaks of yugas, vast cosmic epics that rise and fall in rhythm, while the Maya calculated intricate calendars that foretold shifts in eras, each one accompanied by the destruction or transformation of civilizations. This cyclical worldview is crucial because within it lies the belief that the destruction of a city or empire is never permanent. Instead, it foreshadows a rebirth, a return, a re-emergence when the cycle turns once more. Take Babylon, for example. Even after its fall, prophecies survived declaring that Babylon would one day rise again to dominate the world. These visions were not limited to Mesopotamian seers, but echoed in Judeo-Christian scripture as well. The book of Revelation describes Mystery Babylon the Great, a city that would reappear at the end of days, clothed in splendor yet doomed to destruction once again. To the ancient mind, the ruins were not simply remnants of the past. They were dormant seeds, waiting for the appointed season of return. Similar traditions exist in Mesoamerica. The Toltecs, and later the Aztecs, carried legends of great cities that had sunk into the earth or disappeared beneath waters, but were destined to return in future ages. Tenochtitlan itself was built upon the ruins of earlier cities, and the Aztecs believed they were heirs to a cycle that had played out countless times before. The god Quetzalcoatl, often associated with the cycles of death and resurrection, was said to have vanished into the east, promising one day to return and restore the lost Golden Age. Here, prophecy intertwined with urban identity. Cities were not merely centers of power, but living entities bound to the rhythms of gods and stars, fated to fall and rise again. Egypt, too, preserved echoes of prophetic return. In the Hermetic writings, which later influenced Renaissance occultists, there are passages that describe how Egypt would one day fall into ruin, its temples covered in sand, its gods forgotten. Yet these same texts foretold that in a far-off age, the gods would return, the Nile would flourish again, and Egypt would awaken from its slumber. Some esoteric traditions link this idea to the legendary Zep Tepi, the first time, an age of divine presence and advanced civilization. According to these prophecies, history is destined to circle back, returning humanity to that primordial golden state. But not all prophecies spoke of glorious returns. Many carried with them a tone of warning, even dread. The Hopi people of North America, for instance, tell of cities and worlds that existed before ours, each one destroyed when humanity lost its harmony with nature and spirit. Their prophecies declare that our current world is nearing its end, soon to collapse like those before it. And yet, out of this destruction, the survivors will rebuild, sometimes even returning to the sites of the old cities, where the bones of past worlds lie buried. The return is not always triumphant. It may be marked by catastrophe, purging, and rebirth. What is remarkable is how consistently these prophecies describe vanished places not as lost forever, but as suspended, waiting. The Mayan Chilam Balam texts speak of hidden cities that will reappear when the stars realign. Tibetan legends describe Shambhala, a radiant kingdom concealed beyond the mountains, which will one day emerge to save humanity in its hour of greatest need. Celtic lore preserves tales of Avalon and High Brazil, islands that vanished into mist but will reveal themselves again at the turning of the age. Even Plato's account of Atlantis, though framed as a cautionary tale, hints at cycles of destruction and rebirth, implying that Atlantis' fate may not be unique, that other great cities, too, may return. If we step back and analyze, these prophecies appear to serve two purposes. First, they anchor collective memory, preserving the stories of past greatness so they will not be forgotten, even across centuries of ruin. Second, they act as warnings or guides, reminding future generations that what is lost is not necessarily gone, that the past can resurface, often carrying both promise and peril. For esoteric traditions and mystery schools throughout history, these prophecies were not simply folklore. They were maps of time itself. Medieval alchemists, Rosicrucians, and later secret societies often spoke of the hidden city, a symbol both literal and spiritual, representing the return of ancient wisdom in the modern age. For them, the reappearance of a vanished city was a metaphor for enlightenment, a prophecy not of stone and mortar, but of knowledge rediscovered. Yet the literal interpretation, that somewhere, somehow, ancient cities may indeed rise again, was never dismissed. Consider the strange reports of ruins that seem to appear and disappear, like phantom cities glimpsed on distant horizons. Sailors claim to see High Brazil off the coast of Ireland, visible only once every 7 years. Travelers in the deserts of Arabia wrote of Iram, the city of pillars, which would vanish in sandstorms only to reappear unexpectedly. Such accounts blurred the line between myth, prophecy, and physical reality, reinforcing the belief that vanished cities were not gone but hidden, waiting for the moment of their prophesied return. In a modern era, these ancient prophecies take on new meaning. With rising seas threatening coastal cities, with deserts reclaiming once inhabited lands, and with technology capable of revealing structures long buried, it feels as though we are living in the very turning of the cycle foretold by our ancestors. Each discovery of a submerged ruin or desert-buried city seems to echo those ancient promises, that the past is not finished with us yet. And so, the prophecies linger, whispering across time. They remind us that civilizations are not eternal, yet neither are they truly extinguished. They live in cycles, in memory, in prophecy. The vanished cities may return, not always in the way we expect, but always in the way the ancients warned. When we think of archaeology, we often picture careful excavation, measured brushing of soil, and the scientific cataloging of artifacts. But beneath the surface of this discipline lies something more haunting. The voices of ruins themselves, silent yet insistent, speaking through shattered stones and buried foundations. Vanished cities do not only belong to myth or prophecy. They also emerge in physical form, their remnants unearthed by those who dare to listen to the ground. In this section, we enter the twilight world where archaeology intersects with mystery, where ruins seem less like evidence of the past and more like shadows cast into the present, hinting at stories yet unfinished. Consider the case of Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. For decades, shepherds walked across the hills unaware that beneath their feet lay one of the oldest ceremonial complexes in the world, a city of stone older than Stonehenge and the pyramids. When archaeologists uncovered its massive pillars carved with strange animals, the discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world. Conventional history had long insisted that organized religion, monumental architecture, and complex societies emerged only after agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe suggested the opposite, that perhaps belief and ritual built cities before farming ever did. Was this the echo of a vanished civilization, forgotten in human memory, but resurfacing through stone? To many, Göbekli Tepe is less an archaeological site than a message, a reminder that the narrative of human progress may be cyclical rather than linear. Then there is the city of Iram of the Pillars, described in the Quran as a place of immense wealth and towering architecture, lost beneath the sands as punishment for its arrogance. For centuries, scholars debated whether Iram was myth or history. But in the late 20th century, satellite imaging and desert expeditions uncovered traces of an ancient city at Ubar in Oman, revealing collapsed limestone caverns and ruins buried under dunes. The discovery reignited fascination. Had archaeology stumbled onto the fabled Iram? And if so, was its destruction truly by natural collapse? Or was it, as prophecy suggested, an act of divine retribution, marking a city destined one day to rise again? Archaeology is filled with such spectral encounters. In the Andes, entire cities were swallowed by jungles. Machu Picchu, often called the lost city of the Incas, was not truly forgotten. Locals knew of its existence, but its rediscovery by Hiram Bingham in 1911 brought it into global consciousness. Standing among its terraces and temples, many visitors report a sense not only of history, but of unfinished presence, as if the city lingers in a state of suspension. Archaeologists analyze its stones, its water channels, its astronomical alignments, yet the site resists complete explanation. Why was it abandoned? What purpose did it truly serve? The ruins do not answer directly. They whisper instead, leaving scholars and seekers alike with fragments of meaning. What is most striking is that so many of these vanished cities appear to reemerge at moments of cultural transition, almost as if their timing is deliberate. In the 19th century, the rediscovery of Troy, once thought to be merely Homer's poetic invention, reshaped the way the West understood myth. Suddenly, a legendary city stood revealed in ruins, collapsing the wall between story and history. It was as though the stones themselves demanded recognition, asserting that myths may be more than fiction, that they might carry the weight of suppressed truths. In this way, archaeology becomes less an objective science and more an active communion with shadows, an attempt to hear what ruins are trying to say across the gulf of centuries. But ruins do not only speak through their presence. Sometimes, their absence is just as telling. There are countless accounts of phantom cities, ruins that appear and disappear depending on light, weather, or time of day. These could be mirages, yes, but in local traditions they are often explained as echoes of vanished cities bleeding into the present. In Tibet, stories abound of hidden monasteries and underground cities only visible to the worthy. In Ireland, High Brazil was said to rise from the sea once every 7 years, its towers glimmering before vanishing again. Could it be that archaeology, in its most esoteric sense, extends beyond shovels and soil into this liminal territory, where ruins belong as much to shadow as to stone? What ties these stories together is the unsettling impression that cities are not truly dead when they vanish. Instead, they linger in a liminal state, buried, hidden, waiting. Archaeologists may uncover them stone by stone, but the deeper mystery is whether these cities emerge when we are ready to receive them. It is as though the ruins themselves have agency, choosing the moment to speak again. And what do they say when they speak? Some carry warnings. The ruins of Pompeii, frozen in volcanic ash, remind us of the fragility of life and the suddenness of catastrophe. Others speak of resilience. The ruins of Angkor Wat, overtaken by jungle, testify to grandeur, but also to impermanence, the certainty that nature reclaims what humans build. Still others seem to whisper prophecy. The Maya ruins, meticulously aligned with celestial events, suggest a worldview in which history repeats and endings become beginnings. 4. Mystery seekers. Archaeology is never simply about cataloging artifacts. It is about decoding messages left behind, listening to ruins as though they were letters written across time. And when these ruins align with ancient prophecies of return, the effect is electrifying. Imagine standing among the stones of a city that prophecy claims will rise again. Every wall, every shattered column, becomes charged with possibility, vibrating with a future not yet written. The most provocative idea is this, that the ruins themselves are not only remnants, but portals. They are thresholds between past and future, between what has been lost and what may come again. When archaeologists dig, They're not only unearthing history, they may be awakening sleeping cities, nudging them closer to their prophesied return. And so, archaeology becomes more than science. It becomes a dialogue with shadows. Every ruin uncovered, every city restored to memory, is like a voice calling out of time. We are not finished. Our story is not over. The cycle has not yet completed. Throughout history, maps have been far more than simple guides for navigation. They were symbols of power, instruments of mystery, and sometimes secret repositories of forbidden knowledge. Ancient cartographers often included places that today we cannot find, lands and cities that seem to have vanished from existence. These hidden maps form a shadow archive of humanity's forgotten past, suggesting that vanished cities were not only remembered, but recorded, encoded into parchment and vellum, waiting for the day when their significance would be rediscovered. In this section, we turn to the cartographic record, where geography and prophecy meet, and where the maps of the past whisper of realms that may yet return. One of the most famous examples is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer. This map, compiled from older sources, famously depicts the coastline of South America with uncanny accuracy. But it also appears to show the coast of Antarctica, centuries before it was officially discovered and, strangely, without its current ice covering. Scholars debate whether this is coincidence, misinterpretation, or evidence that the map was copied from charts made by an unknown, advanced civilization long before recorded history. If so, it implies that cities and settlements once flourished on a continent now locked in ice, their memory preserved in the map like a fossil in paper. Could this be a record of vanished cities destined to re-emerge when the Earth itself shifts? Equally compelling is the legend of Vinland, a mysterious land described in Norse sagas. Long dismissed as myth, it was eventually confirmed that Norse explorers reached North America centuries before Columbus. Yet the maps that hinted at Vinland contained not just coastlines but references to settlements, hulls, villages, even great houses. Were these real Norse colonies that disappeared, leaving only cartographic ghosts behind? Or were the mapmakers copying from even older records, recalling cities that had existed long before Vikings sailed westward? Then there is Hy Brasil, often called the Phantom Island. For centuries, it appeared on maps off the coast of Ireland, marked clearly as a round island, sometimes even with towns drawn upon it. Sailors swore they had glimpsed it rising from the mist, only to watch it vanish again. The island was charted on maps well into the 19th century, despite repeated expeditions failing to find it. What is remarkable is the consistency of these depictions. Map after map, across generations, insisted that Hy Brasil was real. Could it have been a city island that vanished into another realm of time, awaiting its return? Or was it a deliberate insertion by mapmakers, preserving a secret too dangerous to disclose openly? Another intriguing example is the Zeno map of 1558, which depicted strange islands in the North Atlantic, some of which do not exist today. The map was based on supposed voyages of two Venetian brothers in the 14th century, but many historians argue it drew upon earlier, lost sources. The islands shown include Estotaland and Frisland, lands that appear in multiple cartographic traditions yet cannot be located today. Were these distortions, errors in copying, or were they echoes of lands and cities swallowed by sea or erased by time? What is undeniable is that medieval and Renaissance cartographers often worked from sources far older than their own era. Piri Reis himself admitted his map was compiled from maps drawn in the time of Alexander the Great. If true, this suggests a chain of preservation stretching back thousands of years. Each generation of mapmakers added, revised, and sometimes obscured details, but through this process fragments of forgotten geography survived. These hidden maps became vessels of memory, carrying the imprint of vanished places forward into the modern age. There's also the question of deliberate concealment. Many maps were not intended for public circulation, but for royal courts, secret societies, or naval powers who guarded their knowledge jealously. Spanish and Portuguese maps of the Age of Exploration were often classified, treated as state secrets. Could it be that among these hidden charts were records of cities deliberately erased from public knowledge, preserved only in elite archives? We know, for instance, that Jesuit missionaries in South America compiled extensive maps of the Amazon, many of which remain locked away. Some explorers reported vast stone ruins in the jungle, sketched into maps, but later dismissed or buried in secrecy. Did these maps preserve knowledge of vanished Amazonian cities, concealed to protect colonial powers' interests, or to hide truths humanity was not yet ready to face? Even more tantalizing are the esoteric maps, those not of physical landscapes, but of symbolic or mystical geographies. Medieval Mappa Mundi often placed Jerusalem at the center of the world, surrounded by both real and mythical lands. The Hereford Mappa Mundi includes strange cities, paradises, and lost kingdoms alongside familiar places. To its creators, geography was inseparable from prophecy. Maps charted not only space but time, showing where history had unfolded and where it would unfold again. In this sense, cities that vanished from the material world could still be mapped in the symbolic one, waiting for their prophesied return. Modern researchers, using satellite imagery and sonar mapping, have in some ways become heirs to this tradition. They are creating their own hidden maps, revealing structures beneath deserts, oceans, and jungles. The LiDAR surveys of Central America have uncovered entire networks of Maya cities once swallowed by vegetation. Off the coast of India, sonar scans revealed what may be the submerged city of Dwarka, long thought to be only a legend. These technologies are producing a new kind of cartography, one that confirms that countless vanished cities do, in fact, exist, waiting to be recharted. Yet even now, official channels are slow to update their maps. Many discoveries linger in limbo, known to specialists, whispered about in alternative history circles, but absent from the maps that guide the public. It is almost as though the tradition of hidden maps continues, knowledge carefully rationed, withheld until the time is right. And so we return again to the idea of prophecy. Perhaps the maps do not merely record geography. Perhaps they are scripts of destiny, tracing not only where cities once stood, but where they will rise again. When we study these maps, what strikes us most is the interplay between accuracy and imagination. On the one hand, they preserve precise coastlines and astonishingly correct proportions. On the other, they show lands that today cannot be located. This paradox is what makes them so haunting. They are at once reliable and unreliable, trustworthy and deceptive. Like the ruins themselves, they speak in fragments, whispering of places both lost and inevitable. And so, the hidden maps remain with us, half forgotten, half remembered. They chart realms that may have slipped into shadow, but are not gone forever. To study them is to peer into a mirror of history, one that reflects not only the past but the future. For if the prophecies are true, then these maps are not relics. They're guidebooks. They are blueprints of return. For every city that vanished, for every civilization that crumbled into dust, there's always been a question: what knowledge was lost, and what, if anything, was preserved? While ruins crumble and maps fade, there are persistent whispers that fragments of this forbidden knowledge were hidden away, safeguarded not by nations or kings, but by secret societies whose roots stretch deep into the shadows of history. These guardians of the past were said to have preserved prophecies, technologies, and truths about vanished cities, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready, or desperate enough, to rediscover them. Consider the Knights Templar, perhaps the most famous of all secret orders. Officially, they were warrior monks, protectors of pilgrims in the Holy Land. But legends tell us their true mission was far stranger. Beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the Templars supposedly unearthed ancient relics, scrolls, and even maps of forgotten cities. These discoveries, it is said, were the real source of their sudden wealth and influence across medieval Europe. After their suppression in the 14th century, rumors claimed that surviving Templars carried their treasures and secrets into hiding, possibly to Scotland, Portugal, or even across the Atlantic. Some researchers suggest that encoded in Templar lore are references to cities like Atlantis or to hidden realms in the New World that would not be rediscovered for centuries. Could it be that the Templars became custodians of knowledge about vanished civilizations, preserving it until a destined return? Then there are the Freemasons, who emerged centuries later and claim symbolic descent from the Templars. Their rituals and symbols, compasses, pillars, unfinished temples, speak of construction and restoration, as though their mission is not only spiritual but architectural. Masonic lore frequently alludes to lost wisdom from the ancient world, the secrets of Solomon's temple, the mysteries of Egypt, and the science of sacred geometry. Some esoteric writers argue that within Masonic lodges lie veiled references to vanished cities, not as mere allegory, but as real places awaiting their moment of return. Their great obsession with architecture, after all, implies a link to the rebuilding or reawakening of something once destroyed. In the East, we find parallel traditions. The Brotherhoods of Tibet and Himalayan legends of Shambhala speak of hidden monasteries guarding scriptures that describe the rise and fall of past worlds. These secret custodians claim that when the world falls into chaos, the knowledge of Shambhala will re-emerge, guiding humanity into a new golden age. To the uninitiated, this may sound mythic. Yet, in these traditions, the line between myth and prophecy is razor thin. For the lamas who preserve these teachings, Shambhala is not a metaphor, but a city both hidden and real, awaiting its destined return. The Rosicrucians of Renaissance Europe also carried a mission of preservation and prophecy. Their manifestos spoke of an invisible fraternity holding the wisdom of the ancients, knowledge that could transform society when the time was right. To the Rosicrucians, the vanished cities of antiquity were not simply ruins, but symbols of an ancient science, alchemy, astronomy, and the lost art of harmonizing humanity with the cosmos. They believed that this knowledge was scattered after catastrophes like the fall of Atlantis or the burning of Alexandria's library, and their mission was to reassemble it piece by piece. The Rosicrucians, then, saw themselves as custodians of fragments, guardians of keys that might unlock the return of those lost civilizations, whether physically or spiritually. Across cultures, this pattern repeats. The Dogon tribe of Mali possesses astonishing astronomical knowledge, including details about the star Sirius and its invisible companion long before Western science confirmed its existence. Their oral tradition claims this knowledge came from visitors, the Namo, who brought wisdom from the stars and instructed the Dogon to preserve it. Was this knowledge originally tied to a vanished city, perhaps long erased from the African landscape? If so, then the Dogon function as another kind of secret society, custodians of an inherited memory too vast to explain through conventional history. But why the secrecy? Why would societies dedicated to preserving knowledge of vanished cities not simply proclaim it to the world? The answer, as they themselves often suggest, lies in timing. Knowledge too powerful, revealed too early, can destroy rather than save. A prophecy that speaks of a city's return is not to be taken lightly. If revealed prematurely, it could ignite chaos, false messianic movements, or wars of conquest. And so these groups hide their knowledge, passing it down through initiation, allegory, and symbol. In this way, the memory of vanished cities survives like an ember, glowing faintly, never extinguished. There are even suggestions that these societies play an active role in shaping when and how such cities might return. Some conspiratorial traditions argue that Freemasons, Rosicrucians, or other hidden orders deliberately plan world events, wars, discoveries, even revolutions, in alignment with ancient cycles and prophecies. If true, this would mean that the return of vanished cities is not only a matter of fate, but of design, orchestrated by hidden hands working for shadows. It is a chilling thought that history itself may be manipulated to fulfill ancient blueprints written by vanished civilizations. Skeptics, of course, dismiss these claims as fanciful. They argue that secret societies use mythology as symbolic teaching tools, not as literal blueprints for vanished realms. Yet, the persistence of these stories across time and the uncanny overlap between prophecy and archaeological discovery suggests there is more at play. When a hidden city emerges from jungle or desert, just as prophecy said it would, one must wonder, who preserved that memory, and how did it survive intact for so long? In modern times, whispers of guardianship continue. Researchers have claimed that the Vatican's secret archives contain scrolls and maps pointing to cities that mainstream archaeology has yet to acknowledge. Freemason lodges are said to encode in their architecture references to Atlantis, Lemuria, or Egypt's lost Zep Tepi. And even intelligence agencies, some argue, act as modern inheritors of this role, sequestering discoveries, classifying satellite imagery of ancient ruins, and keeping humanity blind to the full scope of its past. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not whether vanished cities will return, but whether someone already knows when and how they will. If secret societies truly are guardians of this knowledge, then they may hold prophecies far more detailed than any preserved in scripture or myth. And if those prophecies are accurate, then the world we inhabit today is not merely modern. It is a staging ground, waiting for the moment when ancient cities awaken and the guardians step forward to reveal what they have long concealed. Until then, the guardians remain in the shadows, symbols of continuity between the ancient and the modern, the visible and the invisible. Their rituals, cryptic as they may appear, may be more than theater. They may be rehearsals for a return. In the 21st century, the whispers of vanished cities no longer live only in the pages of myth or the coded rituals of secret societies. They echo in the language of satellites, drones, and sonar scans. They emerge in the data of LiDAR surveys that peel back the dense canopy of jungles, revealing geometric outlines where only chaos of vegetation was once seen. For the first time in history, humanity wields the tools to strip away nature's disguise and peer into the bones of forgotten worlds. And the results are nothing short of astonishing. Take, for instance, the jungles of Central America. For centuries, the Maya were thought to be scattered, decentralized, their grand cities isolated. But in recent years, LiDAR mapping has revealed something far more extraordinary. Sprawling metropolises hidden beneath the forest, complete with highways, causeways, and fortifications. Suddenly, what appeared to be a civilization of scattered city-states is redefined as an interconnected empire of millions, humming with complexity. The jungle had swallowed them, but technology resurrected them. Modern archaeology quite literally bringing a vanished city back into view. Similar revelations emerge from the deserts of Egypt. For generations, the sands seemed to hold their secrets stubbornly. But ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging now uncover buried foundations stretching far beyond the boundaries of known temples and pyramids. Some researchers even argue that beneath the sands of Saqqara and Giza lie structures older than dynastic Egypt itself, possible remnants of a civilization that preceded pharaohs, one that echoes the tantalizing myths of Zep Tepi, the first time when gods walked among men. If such ruins are ever confirmed, it would mean that vanished cities of pre-dynastic antiquity are not legends, but fossils awaiting excavation. In the Andes, too, technology breathes life into ghost cities. Drones skim across the mist-shrouded valleys, capturing ruins too remote to access by foot. Satellite analysis reveals that what once seemed like isolated sites, Machu Picchu, Choqquirau, are in fact part of an immense network of settlements and ceremonial centers. It suggests that the Inca, and perhaps their mysterious predecessors, orchestrated a system of cities woven together by sacred geometry. These places, long lost to memory, rise again in digital clarity, their ghostly outlines marked in glowing pixels on archaeologists' screens. But perhaps the most haunting modern echoes come from the sea. Off the coast of India, in the Gulf of Kumbat, sonar has detected vast geometric patterns buried beneath the waves, avenues, grids, structures that resemble city blocks. The finds are controversial, debated fiercely in academic circles. But if they are genuine, they suggest a metropolis thousands of years older than Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, swallowed by rising seas. Likewise, off the coast of Japan, near Yonaguni, divers have explored massive stone formations that resemble stairways, terraces, and platforms. Are they natural, or the remnants of a sunken city? The debate continues, but the very existence of these formations forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The ocean, which covers most of our planet, may be concealing countless cities erased by time. This marriage of archaeology and technology transforms myths into maps. Prophecies of lost cities that once sounded like riddles now find unexpected validation in hard data. Legends of cities swallowed by the sea are mirrored in sonar scans. Myths of jungle empires reappear in LiDAR surveys. Stories dismissed as allegory emerge again, pixel by pixel, as undeniable structures etched beneath earth and water. In this way, modern science and ancient myth begin to converge, weaving two seemingly opposing threads into a single narrative. Yet the question lingers: are we simply discovering what was lost, or are we, in some way, participating in their return? When archaeologists excavate a buried temple, they do not merely uncover stones. They reactivate memory. They bring the city back into human awareness, re-anchoring it in consciousness after centuries of oblivion. In a sense, this too is a return. A vanished city does not need to rise from the ocean floor to live again. It need only re-enter the human story. Technology, then, is not just uncovering ruins, it is reawakening civilizations. There is also the growing sense that technology itself echoes the functions of these vanished cities. Ancient metropolises were not only centers of politics and trade. They were cosmological engines, designed to mirror the stars, to harness the sun, to align humanity with the rhythms of the universe. Today, humanity builds digital cities, networks of data, grids of connectivity, vast architectures of cyberspace. Are these digital metropolises a reincarnation of ancient city concepts, reborn in another form? The symmetry is uncanny. The vanished cities sought to link heaven and earth. Our modern digital cities link mind and machine. Both function as bridges, suggesting that civilization, in whatever form it takes, endlessly recreates itself according to archetypal patterns. This cyclical vision becomes sharper when viewed against the backdrop of climate change and rising seas. Entire regions face the threat of submersion within centuries. Cities like Venice, Jakarta, and Miami already battle the waters. In this sense, we stand on the brink of repeating history. Our own metropolis is at risk of becoming the next vanished cities, swallowed not by myth but by measurable tides. The cycle continues. Cities rise, they flourish, they are lost, and perhaps one day rediscovered by future archaeologists who will scan their ruins from skies we cannot imagine. But perhaps the most chilling modern echo is this: we may not be the first technologically advanced civilization to walk this earth. Some researchers propose that the ruins of vanished cities, if older than acknowledged, might be remnants of a forgotten epoch of human, or even pre-human, technological achievement. They point to precision stonework, megalithic alignments, and unexplained engineering feats as evidence that our current high-technology civilization is not unique, but part of a repeating cycle of rise and collapse. If that is true, then our discoveries today are not merely archaeological. They are reminders, warnings, evidence that what we build now may vanish just as completely, and that another humanity may one day rediscover us as we now rediscover them. This, then, is the paradox of modern echoes. Our tools bring back the cities of the past, but they also hold up a mirror to our own fragility. Every vanished city once believed itself immortal. Every empire thought its walls indestructible. Yet time eroded them all. The fact that we can resurrect their memory is both inspiring and humbling. It shows us that nothing is ever truly lost, but also that nothing is ever truly safe. And so the prophecy of vanished cities continues, not only in myth, but in the laboratories, satellites, and excavation pits of our age. The echoes grow louder with every discovery, reminding us that the past is not past. It is waiting for us to listen, to learn, and perhaps to prepare. Because if the cycle holds, then our cities too are destined one day to vanish, leaving only traces for future eyes to rediscover. Prophecies do not speak in the language of dates or scientific data. They whisper through symbols, metaphors, and cycles. When ancient seers described vanished cities that would one day return, they did not mean a literal reemergence of stone walls from beneath the sea, at least not always. They often spoke of something deeper, something archetypal, the eternal rhythm of rise, fall, and rebirth. Civilization, they suggested, is not linear but circular. Every golden age is followed by a collapse, every collapse by a dark age, and every dark age by the birth of another dawn. Across cultures, this cyclical prophecy appears with uncanny consistency. In Hindu cosmology, the world moves through vast ages known as yugas. A golden age of purity eventually descends into darkness and destruction, only to be renewed again. In Mesoamerican thought, the universe has already ended and been reborn multiple times. The Mexica, or Aztecs, spoke of 5 suns, each representing a world destroyed and recreated. In Plato's dialogues, we hear of Atlantis, a mighty city that fell in a single night of fire and flood. Yet the story itself was framed as a warning to Athens, suggesting that such cycles are not confined to myth, but are inevitable patterns of human destiny. This raises a provocative question. When prophecies warn of vanished cities returning, do they mean that the ruins themselves will rise, or that the conditions which created them will come again? Are we not already living in an age where forgotten lessons resurface? As climate change, political upheaval, and social unrest shake the world, are we not seeing reflections of the same forces that once toppled the Mayan kingdoms, the Sumerian city-states, or the Mycenaean strongholds? The prophecy may not be about literal stone, but about human experience repeating its eternal script. Esoteric traditions delve even deeper, claiming that vanished cities were not merely physical places but embodiments of cosmic truths. To initiates of mystery schools, cities were not just built of stone, they were built of symbolism. Their layouts reflected star constellations. Their temples embodied cosmic laws, and their rhythms mirrored the cycles of creation itself. When these cities vanished, it was as if humanity had lost a connection to a greater order, drifting into forgetfulness. Thus, the prophecy of return also hints at a spiritual renewal, the possibility that humanity will once again align with the hidden knowledge encoded in these ancient places. Consider the lore of Shambhala in Tibetan Buddhism, a hidden city said to exist in another dimension, veiled from ordinary eyes. It is prophesied that one day Shambhala will reappear, and from it will emerge a force to restore balance to the world. Similarly, in Western esotericism, the idea of a hidden city or kingdom that will return, sometimes Avalon, sometimes Agartha, sometimes the New Jerusalem, repeats endlessly. These cities represent more than geography. They are archetypes of perfection, idealized blueprints for civilization. When prophets speak of their return, they mean that humanity may one day reattune itself to those blueprints, building anew in harmony with forgotten truths. The theme of cycles also permeates astrology and cosmic prophecy. Ancient astrologers observed that the heavens move in repeating patterns, that planetary conjunctions mark the rise and fall of empires. The destruction of one city and the emergence of another often coincided with celestial alignments, suggesting that the fate of cities was written in the stars. Some modern esotericists believe that we are entering a new alignment now, an astrological shift that heralds the end of one great cycle and the beginning of another. If so, the prophecy of vanished cities returning may not be about Atlantis or Lemuria literally re-emerging, but about the rebirth of the archetype they represented, civilizations built on higher principles, destined to rise once humanity has endured its trial of darkness. But there is another layer, one more haunting. Prophecy often carries a dual edge. It is both a warning and a mirror. To say that vanished cities will return may also mean that the same catastrophes that destroyed them will strike again, that we will repeat the mistakes of pride, hubris, ecological disregard, or war, and that our own cities will follow the same fate. This darker reading suggests that prophecy is not about rediscovery, but about recurrence, that Atlantis, Babylon, and countless others did not vanish once and for all, but that their fate is waiting for us, echoing through time. Esoteric writers of the Renaissance, steeped in Hermeticism, spoke of the Great Year, a cosmic cycle after which history repeats itself. Isaac Newton himself, fascinated not only with physics but with prophecy, tried to decode biblical timelines, convinced that ancient cities had fallen in patterns that could be calculated, predicted, and applied to the future. The blending of science and prophecy shows how deeply this idea of return has embedded itself into human thought, that history is not chaos, but rhythm. Modern mystics take this further, arguing that humanity itself is the returning city. The memory of lost civilizations, Atlantis, Lemuria, Shambhala, is not external but internal, encoded in our collective unconscious. Carl Jung hinted at this when he spoke of archetypes, primordial images that repeat across all human cultures. The city, as an archetype, is one of the most powerful. The walled enclosure, the sacred center, the place where heaven and earth meet. Each time we build a new metropolis, we are unconsciously reenacting the memory of vanished ones. Thus, the prophecy may be less about ruins re-emerging and more about us reawakening the archetype, building again what we have always built, compelled by patterns deeper than reason. But there are those who insist the prophecy is literal, that one day, perhaps through tectonic upheaval or shifts in sea levels, the ruins of Atlantis will break the surface of the Atlantic, or Lemuria will rise from the Indian Ocean. They point to myths of sunken lands that shall rise again as more than metaphor. They imagine divers, explorers, or even ordinary sailors witnessing stone towers emerging from the waves, a literal resurrection of what was lost. While mainstream science dismisses this as fantasy, the sheer persistence of such visions across cultures lends them an eerie power. Why would so many civilizations predict that sunken lands would return if there were not some ancestral memory or cyclical truth embedded within them? And yet, whether literal or symbolic, the heart of the prophecy remains the same. Nothing stays buried forever. Truth suppressed will surface. Knowledge lost will resurface. Cities forgotten will return, whether in stone, in myth, or in the minds of those who remember. The cycle turns, and with it, humanity is offered the chance to either repeat its mistakes or rise above them. The esoteric dimension of this prophecy, then, is both hopeful and dire. Hopeful, because it suggests that wisdom is never truly lost, that somewhere in ruins, in stories, in dreams, it waits for us. Dire, because it reminds us that we too may fall, vanish, and become a myth to future generations. In this sense, prophecy is not prediction, but invitation. An invitation to break the cycle, to honor the memory of vanished cities by learning from their fate, and to prepare ourselves for the possibility that their return is also our mirror. And so we arrive at the threshold of the prophecy's deepest meaning, that the vanished cities are not just about history or archaeology, but about consciousness itself. They vanish when we forget, They return when we remember. Their stones may lie beneath jungles, deserts, and seas, but their essence lies within us, waiting to be awakened. When humanity is ready, truly ready, the cities will return. And whether that means the rising of stone or the rising of spirit may not matter at all. History is not only written by the victors, it is also buried, censored, and guarded. For every ruin unearthed, there are others that remain hidden, not because nature conceals them, but because someone chooses to. When we speak of vanished cities and prophecies of their return, we must also speak of those who have, across ages, taken it upon themselves to guard their memory, or to ensure their silence. The guardians of the vanished are as much a part of the story as the ruins themselves. Consider the archives of the Vatican. Vast libraries hold manuscripts that most of the world will never see. Scrolls from antiquity, accounts of travelers, fragments of gospels banned from official canon. Among them, it is rumored, are texts describing lands and cities that no longer exist, testimonies of ancient floods, and knowledge of civilizations that do not fit into the standard chronology of history. The official stance is preservation, but whispers persist that some knowledge is too destabilizing to reveal, that records of vanished cities and their prophecies are deliberately withheld, kept only for the initiated. The Church, after all, has long walked a tightrope between revelation and control. But the Vatican is not alone. Across the globe, secret societies have claimed to inherit fragments of forgotten knowledge. The Freemasons, whose symbols echo ancient stone masonry and sacred geometry, are often accused of preserving the blueprints of cities lost to time. Their obsession with temples, compasses, and the square suggests not only architecture, but cosmology, as if they hold memory of how vanished cities were aligned to the stars. The Rosicrucians, too, wove myths of hidden kingdoms and secret cities, promising initiates access to truths that the world had forgotten. To them, prophecy was not superstition, but encoded knowledge, passed down from civilizations that had fallen, guarded until humanity was ready once again. And then there are the stories of modern suppression. Archaeologists working in Egypt have whispered of discoveries beneath the sands, tunnels, chambers, even entire structures, sealed off from the public, with official explanations vague or absent. When explorers claim to have found ruins off the coast of India, Japan, or Cuba, they are often met with swift dismissal, their research buried under accusations of pseudoscience. While skepticism is necessary, one cannot help but wonder if the speed and intensity of suppression hint at something more, at the fear that mainstream history could be rewritten if such discoveries were taken seriously. After all, to admit that an advanced city existed thousands of years earlier than believed would shatter the carefully constructed timelines upon which modern civilization rests. Why suppress such knowledge? The answer may be found in power. Vanished cities, if truly advanced, hold secrets of technology, spirituality, and governance that could alter our present world. To reveal that others before us harnessed energy in ways we cannot replicate, or built with precision we cannot match, would force us to confront the limits of our progress. To acknowledge prophecies that predicted cycles of destruction and rebirth would undermine the narrative of linear human advancement. Suppression, then, becomes a form of control over history, over destiny, and over the imagination of humanity. There are tales, often dismissed as conspiracy, that governments and intelligence agencies monitor sites linked to vanished cities. In South America, some researchers claim entire valleys are restricted, guarded by military presence, with aerial photography censored. In the Middle East, whispers tell of ruins uncovered during modern conflicts, swiftly sealed or destroyed under the guise of war. In Antarctica, satellite images occasionally reveal geometric anomalies beneath the ice, only to vanish from public view shortly after. To some, these are coincidences. To others, they are evidence that vanished cities have already been rediscovered, but that their existence is guarded by those who deem humanity unprepared for the truth. Guardianship is not always sinister. However, in some traditions, the guardians of vanished cities are protectors, not suppressors. Native peoples in both the Americas and Oceania speak of sacred places that must remain hidden, known only to the initiated, lest their power be misused. These are not ruins to be excavated, but living presences, spiritual centers veiled for the good of humanity. The prophecy of return, in this context, is not about archaeologists digging up stones, but about humanity maturing enough to access sacred knowledge without corruption. The guardians, whether shamans, elders, or secret orders, ensure that the cities return not to conquer or destabilize, but to heal. Still, the line between protection and suppression is thin. A secret kept for too long becomes indistinguishable from censorship. Imagine if Atlantis were discovered tomorrow, not as myth but as fact. What would change? Nations might scramble for ownership of its ruins, for the technologies hinted at in its myths. Corporations might rush to exploit its resources. Religions might face crises of faith. In such a scenario, the Guardians might believe they're justified in keeping the city hidden until humanity can handle its rediscovery. But who decides when humanity is ready? Who chooses what we are allowed to know and what must remain buried? The most intriguing possibility is that the Guardians themselves are heirs of the vanished cities. This idea, found in esoteric writings, suggests that survivors of great cataclysms, Atlanteans, Lemurians, or other unnamed peoples, retreated into hidden sanctuaries, preserving fragments of their wisdom. These sanctuaries may be physical, deep within mountains or beneath the earth, or they may be metaphysical, existing in dimensions beyond ordinary perception. From these sanctuaries, the Guardians watch, waiting for the cycle to turn, for humanity to stand once again at the threshold of return. When prophecy speaks of cities re-emerging, perhaps it is not ruins but survivors, descendants, or inheritors of that lost wisdom stepping forward to guide us. There are moments in history that feel like hints of this, sudden bursts of knowledge, inexplicable inventions, or cultural renaissances that seem to emerge from nowhere. Some esoteric thinkers argue that these are not coincidences but gifts, released by the Guardians at carefully chosen times, nudging humanity forward without overwhelming it. The Renaissance itself, with its sudden rediscovery of ancient texts and knowledge, could be seen as one such moment. Could we now be approaching another? A time when the Guardians prepare to release what they have long protected? And so, the prophecy deepens. The return of vanished cities may depend not on tectonic shifts or archaeological triumphs, but on the choices of those who guard them. Secrets locked in archives, hidden in deserts, encoded in myths, and buried beneath ice may remain sealed until the Guardians decide otherwise. The real question, then, is not whether the cities will return, but whether we will be allowed to see them when they do. The Guardians of the Vanished stand at a threshold between worlds. They hold keys to the past and the future, to knowledge that could shatter illusions or ignite enlightenment. They are protectors, suppressors, conspirators, or saints, depending on who tells the story. But they remind us of one truth, that history is not entirely ours, and that some chapters are still withheld. The prophecy of vanished cities is entwined with them, because without the Guardians, the cycle of forgetting and remembering would collapse. Whether we see them as sinister keepers of forbidden knowledge or benevolent protectors of sacred truths, the Guardians remain central to the mystery. Their silence is as much a part of the prophecy as the ruins themselves. And if the prophecy is true, then the time will come when silence can no longer be maintained, when the vanished will no longer be suppressed, and when the Guardians themselves will step aside, willingly or not, to allow the cities to return. There is always a moment in every great mystery when speculation, myth, and warning all converge into one possibility. What if the prophecies are true? What if the vanished cities are not merely ruins buried in jungles or shadows on sonar scans, but entities awaiting a return? In this climactic point, we must confront not only archaeology or myth, but the imagination of prophecy itself. the point where history and destiny collide. The idea of return has haunted humanity for millennia. When Plato wrote of Atlantis, he did not simply describe its destruction. He framed it as a lesson for Athens, a cycle destined to repeat. This has happened before, and will happen again, was the hidden undertone. For the Mayans, the end of a calendar cycle was never annihilation, but transition, the passing of one world into another. In Norse prophecy, Ragnarok brings the destruction of the old gods, but from the ashes a new world rises, green and fertile, with survivors who carry forward memory. And in the revelation of John, a new Jerusalem descends from the heavens, a city not buried, but reborn, radiant and eternal. Each culture, each myth, points to the same idea. Vanished cities do not remain vanished forever. What would it mean for such a prophecy to unfold in our own time? Imagine the coastlines shifting with the tremors of the earth, and from beneath the waves, structures of stone beginning to rise. At first, fragments, pillars, walls, archways, jutting from the sea like the bones of titans. Scientists scramble to explain it. Tectonic uplift, volcanic activity. But the geometry is undeniable: roads, plazas, stairways cut by human hands. The myths of Atlantis, long dismissed as allegory, now pulse with sudden reality. Humanity faces a question it has not asked for centuries. How do we respond when myth steps into history? But the return of vanished cities need not be literal stone erupting from the sea. It may come through revelation. Hidden archives opened, guardians stepping forward, technologies rediscovering what was buried. In this sense, the return may already be underway. Every LiDAR scan that reveals lost metropolises beneath the jungle canopy is a return. Every sonar survey that uncovers underwater grids is a return. Every suppressed scroll brought into light, every myth re-examined with new eyes, is a return. Slowly, like pieces of mosaic, the vanished cities are reassembling in our collective memory. Yet the climax of the prophecy carries a deeper, more unsettling meaning. What if the return is not gentle? What if the cycles that once destroyed great cities, flood, fire, war, return as well? The drowned lands of Doggerland in Europe vanished when sea levels rose at the end of the Ice Age. The Minoan civilization crumbled after the volcanic eruption of Thera. The Mayans endured droughts, so severe their cities emptied into ruin. If history is a cycle, then their fate is not just their own. It is also ours. Today, as the seas rise again, as earthquakes stir, as fires rage, we find ourselves standing in the very patterns that once swallowed entire civilizations. The prophecy may not simply say that vanished cities will return, but that the conditions of their vanishing will return too, and with them, the chance to fall or to transcend. Esoteric traditions frame this climax differently. They say that when the cities return, it will not be through archaeology, but through consciousness. Humanity itself is approaching a threshold, a great unveiling. The memory of Atlantis, of Lemuria, of Shambhala, lies buried in our collective unconscious. And when the cycle turns, when the stars align as they once did in ancient ages, that memory will resurface. Suddenly, humanity will remember. Our art, our architecture, our technologies will begin to echo those forgotten blueprints. We will rebuild, not as a new act, but as a reenactment of something deeply remembered. The prophecy of return, in this telling, is not external but internal. We are the vanished cities, waiting to awaken. There is an eerie power in this idea. Think of the cities we live in now: New York, Tokyo, London, Shanghai. We believe them indestructible, eternal, centers of commerce and culture that define the world. But so too did the citizens of Uar, of Thebes, of Tikal, of Carthage. They believed their walls would stand forever. And yet today, their once great streets are broken stone, walked by archaeologists and tourists. What separates us from them? Perhaps only time. And perhaps the prophecy reminds us that no city, no matter how great, is immune. The return of vanished cities may also mean the vanishing of ours. And when future eyes look upon the ruins of our skyscrapers, they may see echoes of prophecies fulfilled. But there is also hope in the prophecy's climax. For if cities return, so too does wisdom. What was lost can be regained. Knowledge buried can be reborn. The spiritual sciences of the ancients, their alignment with the stars, their harmony with natural cycles, their ability to weave myth into daily life, may once again become part of the human experience. The prophecy suggests not just destruction but renewal, not just endings but beginnings. The return of vanished cities is the return of possibility. And so, in this moment of climax, we must hold both visions. The literal, in which ruins rise from the earth or sea, forcing us to confront our small place in the vast sweep of time. And the symbolic, in which vanished knowledge reemerges within us, reshaping our civilization for the future. One is an earthquake, a revelation of stone. The other is a transformation, a revelation of spirit. Both fulfill the prophecy. Both remind us that what vanishes is never truly gone. This is why the climax of the prophecy is not about archaeology or conspiracy alone. It is about perspective. The vanished cities are not relics of the past. They are mirrors of the present and foreshadows of the future. Their return is not something to await passively, but something we participate in through the choices we make, the knowledge we seek, and the wisdom we preserve. Each time we build, we echo the ancient. Each time we destroy, we echo the ancient. The cycle is ours to repeat or to break. In the end, the prophecy's climax leaves us with a haunting question. When the vanished cities return, will we recognize them? Will we honor their lessons? Or will we, like those before us, ignore the warnings until our own walls crumble, our own towers fall, and we too join the long list of civilizations that vanished into silence? The climax is not merely a prediction. It is a call to awaken, to remember, to prepare. For the vanished cities are not as far away as we think. They are beneath us, within us, and perhaps soon before us. And when they return, they will not ask for belief. They will only demand recognition. There comes a moment in every story of prophecy, in every cycle of rise and fall, where the narrative shifts from the vanished cities of the past to the living cities of the present. We stand at that moment now, the reckoning. This is the point where myth ceases to be legend and instead becomes a mirror, reflecting not what was, but what is and what may yet come. The prophecies of vanished civilizations, from Atlantis to Lemuria, from the Mayan world to the ancient Vedic empires, are not simply about ruins submerged or jungles reclaiming temples. They are warnings etched in time, lessons preserved in myth. The reckoning is not about whether they vanished. It is about whether we will follow them. For the ancients, time was never a straight line. It was cyclical, turning like a great wheel. Civilizations rose, flourished, and fell, only to be replaced by others that repeated the same arc. Each cycle ended in reckoning, a moment when the weight of human choices collided with forces greater than themselves, nature, cosmos, destiny. And each time, those who failed to heed the warnings were swept away, their cities reduced to dust, their knowledge scattered. Now, for the first time in human memory, we are conscious of this cycle as it turns again. We know the histories. We know the ruins. We see the patterns. And so, the question looms, will we break the cycle or will we join it? To understand this reckoning, we must revisit the myths that warned of it. The Atlanteans, according to Plato, grew arrogant. They forgot the harmony between the divine and the mortal, choosing greed and conquest over balance. The Mayans, despite their astronomical brilliance, fell into drought and famine because they overexploited their land, stripping forests, draining resources. The people of Easter Island, once thriving, cut down the very trees that sustained them, leaving their island barren. In each case, hubris was the catalyst. The reckoning came not simply from nature, but from humanity's refusal to listen to nature. And when the reckoning came, it was absolute. Now look at our world. Cities glitter with technology, yet our oceans rise as the glaciers melt. Fires rage across forests that once balanced our air. Rivers run dry where once they carved fertile valleys. The climate shifts with a speed not seen in millennia, echoing the catastrophic transitions that ended ice ages and drowned whole lands. Our skyscrapers, our satellites, our digital empires, they are magnificent, but are they immune? Or are we, like Atlantis, building monuments on the edge of a fault line, ignoring the tremors beneath our feet? The reckoning whispers that we are closer to that edge than we admit. But prophecy does not speak only of doom. It speaks of choice. And this is what makes the reckoning different from mere collapse. At its heart, it is not fate, it is opportunity. The reckoning asks, what will we do with the knowledge we now hold? We are the first civilization in history to see the ruins of all others, to study their patterns, to uncover their secrets. We are the first to have satellites mapping jungles, submarines scanning seabeds, archives digitizing every ancient scroll. We are the first to know that. We are not the first. That knowledge is a gift. But will we use it? The reckoning divides humanity into two visions. In the first, we ignore the warnings. We charge ahead, driven by greed and expansion, convinced of our invincibility. We extract until the earth can give no more, pollute until the skies choke, and fight wars over dwindling resources. In this vision, the reckoning comes as it always has, with flood, with fire, with collapse. Future archaeologists, if any survive, will walk among the ruins of New York, Tokyo, and Dubai, just as we walk among the ruins of Tikal, Mohenjo-daro, and Nineveh. Our skyscrapers will be skeletons, our satellites falling stars, our myths reduced to fragments of stories. We will become the next vanished city, the next cycle. In the second vision, however, we heed the call. We look at the vanished cities not as curiosities, but as warnings. We recognize the fragility of our own civilization and choose to act differently. We realign with cycles of the earth, restore balance to nature, rebuild not for conquest, but for continuity. We merge the wisdom of the ancients with the tools of the modern age. In this vision, the reckoning becomes not an end, but a turning point, the moment when humanity, at last, steps out of the repeating cycle of rise and fall and enters a new arc of existence. Perhaps this is what prophecy has always meant, not destruction, but evolution. Esoteric traditions describe this moment in strikingly similar terms. The Theosophists spoke of root races, great epics of humanity that rise and fall in succession, each destroyed by a cataclysm when it strays too far from its intended harmony. The current epoch, they said, is nearing its end, and a new one approaches. Indigenous prophecies, from the Hopi to the Maori, speak of a time when humanity must choose between two paths: the path of chaos, leading to destruction, or the path of balance, leading to renewal. Even modern thinkers echo the same theme. The Anthropocene is our Atlantis moment, the threshold of survival or collapse. The reckoning, then, is universal, transcending culture and time. But here lies the most haunting truth. Reckoning is not only collective, it is personal. Each person, each choice, each act contributes to the cycle. Just as cities are built stone by stone, societies are shaped choice by choice. Will we choose consumption or conservation? War or peace? Forgetting or remembering? If the reckoning is upon us, it is not only governments or corporations who decide the outcome. It is each of us participating in the cycle. The vanished cities remind us of what happens when individuals assume their choices do not matter. The farmer who cut the last tree on Easter Island. The priest who ignored the drought warnings in Mayan lands. The leader who demanded tribute instead of balance in Atlantis. Small acts, multiplied, created collapse. So, too, small acts today, multiplied, can create survival. The reckoning is vast, but it begins in the smallest decisions. And so, as the prophecy turns toward its end, the reckoning forces us to confront a paradox. We are fragile, but we are powerful. We are temporary, but we are enduring. The vanished cities tell us that nothing lasts forever, but they also tell us that memory, story, and wisdom can outlive stone itself. The reckoning is not meant to paralyze us with fear. It is meant to awaken us to possibility. Will we be remembered as the civilization that ignored every warning? Or as the one that finally listened? Will our cities vanish into myth, or will they endure? Not because they are indestructible, but because we learned how to live in harmony with forces greater than ourselves? This is the choice before us. This is the weight of the reckoning. Perhaps this is why the ancients preserved their prophecies at all. Not to scare us with visions of floods and fire, but to remind us that cycles can be seen, choices can be made, futures can be changed. The reckoning is not fixed. It is fluid. And as we stand at its threshold, it is not prophecy that decides the outcome. It is us. And so, we arrive at the final threshold. After tracing the ruins of vanished cities, after listening to the whispers of prophecies that speak of cycles, collapses, and rebirths, we must return to where we began, the question of return. For the prophecy does not merely warn that cities can vanish. It also suggests that they can return, not in stone and mortar, perhaps, but in spirit, in lesson, in cycle. The eternal return is the haunting, almost poetic idea that nothing is truly lost. That every civilization, every story, every choice echoes across time, resurfacing again and again until it is understood. The ancients knew this better than we do. They did not see time as a straight line, marching forward endlessly. They saw it as a spiral, a wheel, a great ocean where tides recede only to rise once more. Atlantis may have sunk beneath the waves, but its story rises with every telling. The Mayans may have left their cities to the jungle, but their calendar marks cycles still turning. Babylon may be dust, yet its symbols live in our language, our astronomy, even in the myths of angels and towers. The eternal return reminds us that civilizations vanish in body, but not in soul. They leave traces, prophecies, artifacts, ruins that resurface to speak again. And in listening, we invite them to return, not as conquerors, but as teachers. The prophecy that warns of return is not about ruins rising whole from the sea, but about their essence re-emerging within us. When we read about Atlantis, we are not uncovering a lost continent. We are recognizing our own hubris mirrored in their downfall. When we gaze upon the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, we are not only marveling at engineering. We are encountering the eternal human desire to reach beyond the mortal, to connect with the divine. The return is symbolic, but it is no less real. Every generation reinterprets the vanished cities, and in doing so, they live again. The eternal return ensures that no prophecy, no ruin, no myth ever truly dies. But there is another layer, one more mysterious and unsettling. What if the return is not only symbolic, but literal? What if the cycles of history are not just metaphors, but cosmic laws? Ancient traditions, from the Hindus who spoke of yugas, to the Mayans who marked back tons, to the Hopi who foresaw the end of worlds, all agree. Civilizations fall, but then new ones rise, carrying echoes of the old. Could it be that the vanished cities are destined to reappear, not as ruins unearthed, but as whole worlds reborn? Perhaps not in the same geography, not with the same names, but as patterns, societies repeating the same triumphs, the same mistakes, until the lesson is learned. If that is true, then we ourselves may be the return of those cities. Perhaps we are Atlantis, reborn in glass towers and satellite networks. Perhaps we are Lemuria, rediscovering our ancient oceans through technology. Perhaps we are Babylon, once again building towers into the heavens, not of bricks, but of code and data, striving to reach the divine through artificial intelligence and space travel. In this view, the prophecy has already been fulfilled. The vanished cities have returned through us. And yet, the warning remains, because just as they vanished, so too could we. The eternal return carries both comfort and terror. Comfort, because nothing is ever truly lost. The wisdom of the ancients, even if buried, will find its way back. Terror, because cycles repeat endlessly, and if we do not change, we are doomed to relive the same endings. Imagine a well turnings. Each spoke is a civilization. Each rise is followed by collapse, followed by rise again. Unless, at last, the wheel is broken or transformed into something new. That is the choice before us. Philosophers have long wrestled with this idea. Friedrich Nietzsche famously described the eternal return as a test of the human spirit. What if every moment you lived would return again and again, eternally? Would you embrace it or despair? Applied to civilizations, the question becomes sharper. What if every empire, every city, every choice we make is destined to repeat? Can we embrace that fate, or can we transcend it? Perhaps this is what prophecy truly means, not foretelling the future, but challenging us to rise above repetition, to finally learn. And in this final reflection, one truth shines brightest. The prophecy of return is not about cities at all. It is about us. The ruins are mirrors. The myths are parables. The prophecies are reminders. They speak to the eternal return within human nature, the cycle of pride and fall, of forgetting and remembering. The cities may vanish, but their lessons return, waiting for us to listen. The prophecy warns not that stone will rise, but that patterns will. And unless we break them, we will live them again. So what then is our responsibility? If we are the return of vanished civilizations, if we are the inheritors of Atlantis, Babylon, Mohenjo-daro, and Tikal, then we carry their unfinished story. The prophecy places the burden on us to either repeat their ending or to write a new chapter. We stand at the edge of an epoch, just as they once did. We have the tools they lacked: satellites to see the storms, science to read the stars, technology to connect across the globe. Yet the question remains the same. Will we listen or will we fall? There is a certain beauty in the thought that the vanished cities are not gone, but are alive in us. Every time we build, we echo their ambition. Every time we dream, we echo their myths. Every time we fail, we echo their warnings. The eternal return means that the past is never past. It is present, always circling back, always whispering. The vanished cities return in our art, our architecture, our spirituality, our questions. They return in every prophecy we retell, every ruin we uncover, every lesson we dare to learn. And so, as we close this journey, we return to silence, the kind of silence that surrounds ruins at dusk when the jungle is still or the desert winds shift across stone. In that silence, the cities are not dead. They are waiting, waiting for us to listen, waiting for us to choose, waiting for us to decide whether we will vanish or whether we will endure. The prophecy warns that they will return. Perhaps they already have. Perhaps the true question is not whether the vanished cities return, but whether we, standing in their shadow, will rise or fall when the cycle turns again. This is the eternal return. This is the prophecy fulfilled. And this is the question we leave with you. When the future looks back on us, will they see another vanished city, or will they see the civilization that finally learned to break the cycle? The answer is not written in ruins. It is written in us.